My name is Thomas Vonier. I am president of the International Union of Architects for another 37 days, 12 hours, and looks like 16 minutes. After that time, one of the 5 individuals you will meet today will become president. You'll meet them shortly. Greetings to our distinguished moderator, Martha Thorne, whom I will introduce a little bit later after we meet the candidates. The aim of this town hall is to allow you, the delegates of our member sections who are listening, to get to know these candidates and their views and their positions. The member sections have submitted many questions, and our moderator has her own questions, which she will present to the candidates as we move ahead. I remind you that we are broadcasting simultaneous interpretation into the 6 languages of the Union, and that after the town hall is completed, this session will be available as a recording in French and English, the 2 working languages of the Union, on the member channel. We seek fairness and balance in these presentations today, and in the questions posed to the candidates and in their responses. Each candidate has had an opportunity to prepare a 2-minute video introducing themselves. We will see them now, Patrick, in alphabetical order, beginning with Korea, then Lebanon, then Mexico, then Romania, then South Africa. Let's begin the videos now, please, and I will be back after that to introduce our moderator. Thank you. Patrick, over to you.
Dear friends, we are living in a time of enormous global challenges that ask us to review our profession as architects. The pandemic accelerated the issue of climate changes and UN urban agenda, but also gave us the opportunity to explore for the future solution. The heritage protection, young architecture education, the gender equality, and most of all, the dignity of the architect. For all this, we must reach out to our society. Last 15 years, I worked for the UIA as Council and Bureau and President of the UIA Seoul Congress. With my 40 years of journey as architect in Korea and worldwide, these activities teach me the important lesson, the value of being united with the common goal. Let's modernize UIA together. First, setting up transparent and democratic governance so everyone has an equal voice. Let's bring in world architecture, including 1.5 million young architects under 40 who suffer most now. Bring in all the member sections, women architects, and global institutions. Utilize the resources of digital technology, outside experts, new global private partners. Korean Wave teach me the power of culture. UIA is new soft power platform for world architecture. Let's make together reborn of UIA. I can assure you, together with the new council, we will open a well-prepared round table for all the member sections in an efficient and friendly way. The founding principles of UIA are still valid. Unite architects of the world on a democratic basis. Let's embrace the very spirit for the bright UIA future. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear friends,
Queridos colegas,
I'm really pleased to
queridos
take part in
amigos,
this important debate
aparte
for
de
the
este
UIA
debate
presidency
importante
election.
de esta
I have my
elección,
experience into the UIA,
con mi
being involved since
experiencia en la
2003
UIA,
till 2014, have been Secretary General from 2011 to 2014. Due to my experience, I believe I can be the link between the past and the future. With age, we gain wisdom. My goals or my topics, if elected, should be based on the approach of all member sections to be involved in our discussion, not only elected people. They should have their word to say. They should being a major part of the restructuring and the innovation of our organization to reach the 21st century. The change should be based second on our new generation. I remember when I've been Secretary General, we got two committees, one for the young architects and the second one for the architecture students. Both have been approved during the Urban General Assembly in 2014. Since that time, I never get any feedback of what they did, or even if they still exist. Third, we have to widen our horizon to reach the society. In this way, we should have a more close relation with UN, UNESCO, and WTO, based on good communications, interacting with media, and the publishing houses. Everybody should know what we did and what we do. We are part of the society. We belong to it. This is our aim. This is what we are devoted to do. Thank you very much.
Warm greetings from Mexico. I am José Luis Cortes. I want your support to become President of the Union of International Architects. Allow me to share my vision for leadership of UIA. My vision is good governance with clear structure and strategies. UIA needs a visionary plan, effective business plan with specific goals and targets. The distinguishing feature of my candidacy will be unification. I am running as a candidate of unity. I want to be transparent of all the activities related to finances, meetings, working groups, competitions, commissions, and standard operating procedures. Greater focus on architecture, urban planning, and climate change. The relation with education is very important. We have to be close to all the schools of architecture. The international organizations like UNESCO, United Nations are relevant for UIA. I want to encourage the participation of female architects. Regional organizations are very relevant. They will have a place in our council meetings as distinguished guests. We have to work together with AUA in Africa, with FAPA in America, with CAE in Europe, with Arcasia in Asia, with UMAR and the Arab countries, with CIAL, with the Portuguese countries, and with Commonwealth as well. We are obliged to design healthy, sustainable, safe, inclusive, equitable, diverse, human, and beautiful cities. If I am fortunate enough to be selected as President of UIA, I will spare no effort on translating this vision into an enduring reality. Thank you very much.
UIA, the International Union of Architects, is like this world. It consists of great achievements from the past, a great set of values, and a tremendous pantheon of contributors along its existence. It is unique, but it also has limits and barriers to dissolve. It needs to adapt to the current and future challenges, which are obviously complex. And like this world, UIA needs new mindsets, large cooperation and action. It needs new energies, new people involved with their creativity and commitment. Like this world, UIA needs to be preserved and changed at the same time. UIA can be a digitalized hub of architectural policies, a multiplier and connector of strong ideas related to the role of architecture for humans, a creative policy maker partnering with the strongest institutions for synergies, an innovative influencer, a worldwide communicator of architectural values, broadcasting continuously. We, as UIA, we need to be like the IoT, the Internet of Things, and like smart technologies driven by big data. We need to be the IOA, the Internet of Architects. This is achievable by activating the fantastic pool of knowledge and, most important, human resources of our all member sections. We need renewable energy. Let us look at UIA like to an architectural project. We have the site, the context, which is the UIA with its structure. We need to revise the brief together. Of course, we do not start from a white paper and do not work in a black box. We need a strong team to research by design. The sketches should appear soon this year. A project of projects will be then displayed, analyzed, tested, debated, and adopted. The UIA project will be as good as we are together. And this is from a manifesto I wrote some time ago. Architecture matters. No more just here and there, but everywhere. No more hit and go. It should be used and reused. No more do it again, but every time better than before. No more knowing exactly what we want, but searching for what we need. No more same rules leading to same mistakes, but constantly adjusting. No more one proposes and other opposes, but debating for decisions. And what kind of architect for such a future? From specialized to culturally driven, from knowledge and skills to experience and character, from speculating the rules to argument for innovations, from client-driven to moderator for common interest, from visual artist to anthropologist, from business success to social reward, and from star to constellation.
Colleagues, I'm asking that you consider me as your choice for the UIA presidency. Over the past 4 years, I've served on the council, and in my experience, it has been an organization of individual parts, some driving hard at their tasks, but for the most part working in their disjointed silos, with bitter infighting among some leadership. Your new leader must be one capable of steadying the ship and upholding the values and principles as espoused in the articles and bylaws of a near 75-year-old organization founded on democratic unity. Urgent review is required and improvement. Leadership is by example and must be two-pronged, one in consultation with its members and in addressing the needs and aspirations of all, the voice of meaningful issues, of shelter, of the environment, for all people, and two, upwards, creating a platform for the UIA as a respected international voice of substance. Leadership requires the following essentials: integrity, effective communication, inclusivity, vision, trust, earned respect, and constructive influence. I have worked tirelessly across all regions and all facets of the organization, having represented the UIA in the following roles: Region 5 representative, UIA's Finance Committee, Awards Committee, Professional Practice Committee, and the Public Health Group. Among others, I initiated the UIA's COVID-19 Information Hub and represented it at the UN General Assembly special session on COVID. I have represented the UIA in webinars and am currently preparing a research paper for the UIA based upon the learnings gained from the pandemic. 4 decades in the architectural environment and a wealth of leadership experience at the highest levels have prepared me to comfortably be entrusted with guiding our organization. I will bring much needed change and hands-on engaging leadership with vision and action. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much, all 5 candidates. Very interesting presentations. It's now my pleasure and my honor to introduce our distinguished moderator. Martha Thorne is the Dean of Architecture at the IE University in Madrid. She is an educator, an author, and a critic. She was formerly a curator with the Art Institute of Chicago, a wonderful institution. She is a graduate of the State University of New York at Buffalo and the University of Pennsylvania, with additional studies at the London School of Economics. She is well known, I think, as the distinguished executive director of the Pritzker Prize, now for some 16 years. Martha is a skilled, experienced, and wonderful interviewer. We are thrilled and fortunate to have her with us today. She's a good friend to the UIA. Martha, we look forward to your interview. Thank you very much.
President Bonnier, it's really my pleasure to be here. It's quite a responsibility to interview 5 such distinguished people. I'm having trouble. I don't see Mr. Cortés on the screen. I'm wondering if he has his camera and can connect, because he is missing, but I see the other 4 candidates.
He's just
he's just arriving. He has some problem with connection.
Okay, we will wait for him, but while Mr. Cortés connects, I just wanted to say that, yes, I do come to you from Madrid and Segovia, where IE School of Architecture and Design is an international school. So I feel very, very comfortable with you, such a distinguished international group. We too are facing some of the challenges that you are, how to bring forward an institution for the challenges of the 21st century while maintaining the great strength of the past. In terms of some ground rules for today, I have a lot of questions. Many of them have been shared by the regions, and I want to thank the regions very much for their thoughtful questions. So I will ask you the questions, and if I could request that our speakers keep your answers short to about a minute, a little less than a minute. If it's a very complicated issue, then yes, we can extend it somewhat. But we would like to keep things moving because there are many questions, and I'm sure there are many topics that our audience of, it looks like we have over 160 people would like to hear about from you. I have divided the questions into sections. The first is about you as an individual, what your role, skills, strengths would be. So this is more a personal point of view that you would, we hope you will share with us. Then we move on to talking about the UIA as an organization. In your wonderful videos, you talked a lot about different ways of structuring strategies, etc. And you will have a chance to talk about that in the second block of questions. The third block has to do with institutional relations and outreach. I know some of you mentioned it in the insightful videos about linking to other organizations and other constituencies, linking to society. And then finally, the fourth block is that very big one that has to do with our global context and challenges. And I'm sure we have all faced in a very personal way these global challenges through COVID over the past months. And just while we still wait for Mr. Cortés to connect, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to meet you on the screen. And we all know that meeting in person, there is no substitute for being in the same physical space in addition to the digital space. And therefore, I invite you to feel free to visit Madrid and Segovia. You have an open invitation. If not, I hope to see you in your home countries or in Paris. Mr. Cortés, bienvenido. Very nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Muchas gracias, Marta. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, and what I said is we will try to keep the questions moving because there are many questions from the different regions. So if when you answer, I will call you by name, please answer. You don't all have to answer the same question. We'll keep it moving. And please try to keep your remarks concise and precise, but about a minute for each one. Let's start with Mr. Tinganas. It's a pleasure to meet you. Why do you want to become president of UIA?
Well, this is the most important question at a certain point. Thank you very much. I have to tell you that I was involved in UIA and I met amazing people. Some of them became my mentors and I was encouraged by those people to continue. And this is the start. And I don't want to disappoint.
Great, thank you. Mr. Han, why would you like to become president? Could you please connect your microphone when you speak? It will, thank you.
Thank you, Martha, for the giving me a chance as a second speaker. Yeah, but my goal is very simple. I was serving for the Korean Institute of Architects, also serving the UIA for last 10, 15 years, one way or another. And I come to the conclusion that this is the only global organization which can really act for the world architects who need a lot of help. And I'm quite sure that with all the experience, I am ready to serve with a lot of details and visions. So that's the only my actually biggest ambition and goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bingham, what would distinguish your presidency from that of the other candidates?
I feel that I have had also the experience of over 30 years involved in the South African institutes, and I see that I would be able to bring something different to what the others could bring forward, and that I'm relatively new and probably less known than many of the other candidates, and therefore haven't been involved in the kind of recycling of people as I see it over a number of years. So I'd hope to bring a freshness to the organization. I think my experience over the past 4 years has shown me what is needed to move forward. I believe it is also the work that I've put in, as I mentioned in the video a moment ago, over 4 main entities of the UIA that set me an excellent stead to actually lead this organization. So I see my freshness as being the major point in this. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Cortés, how are you different from the other candidates? And please connect your mic.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you very much. Well, I am very different because I have been working for many years to UIA. I have been member of council. I have been vice president, and I have been working actively, in many commissions and working groups. And I believe that with all that experience and with the field that we have a big problem in UIA, we don't have a good contact with younger generations. And I have been very much involved with education. I know young people, and revitalize me. And I think we have to look for the future in UIA and not for the past and the present. So that's why I'm thinking I am different, because I feel very close to the young generations.
Thank you. And Mr. Marmaki, it's a pleasure to see you. Why do you want to be president?
Hello, how are you, Marta? Do you hear me well? Yes. So let me say I have got my experience into the UIA and outside the UIA. Into the UIA, I got step by step at all levels. I've been director of Working Program Heritage Region 2, member of the ICC Commission, as I have been CAI Council member. And finally, I have been Secretary General. I believe I have enough experience and wisdom to serve my organization in a good way, sharing ideas, then taking right decision for the benefit of all.
Great, thank you.
A little more thing. Everybody is talking about young generation. I believe during my mandate as Secretary General, we mounted 2 committees, one for young architects and one other for the students of architecture. Both have been approved during General Assembly in Durban. And since that time, since 2014, I never heard about them. So I was focusing on our future, which is our new generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Han, how much time will you be able to spend in Paris as president if this transpires?
I think I will stay there. I live there.
Very good. Mr. Tiganas, how much time would you spend in Paris?
I'm at 3 hours distance by plane from my place to Paris. So it can be as much as possible, as much as necessary.
Great. And Mr. Cortés, you have a longer trip from Mexico to Paris. How do you see, if you are the president, how much time would you spend in Paris?
It will be full time. You know, now with the technology, you are in contact immediately with everybody around the world. I have been in very close relation with all the national sections, and I will be in Paris for all the meetings that I am required, several times a month if it's possible. So no problem for coordinating the staff in UIA and to be in contact with all the bureau, the council members, and all the national sections and the different organizations of architecture around the world.
Mr. Barmaki, do you agree to be in contact by technology, or will you be able to spend time in Paris if you are president? Mr. Barmaki, would you connect your microphone, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. I prefer a human contact than technology. When I was Secretary General, most of my time I spent it in Paris more than staying with my family, and everybody knows about that. Even I got home in Paris to be almost all the time close to the UIA offices. And let me tell you again that human contact is better than technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Bingham, how do you feel about time in Paris if you were president?
I would make time available to be in Paris as much as I'm needed. It's not the travel time that's the issue. It's the quality of time that you spend in your organization with the people that matter. So therefore, I'd be there whenever needed. As has been said by the others, there's technology now that enables us to be in contact and the other organizations that I am and have led, I generally make it a daily exercise of being in contact. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I think the other thing about traveling and being in contact, certainly we know technology has very small costs compared to the ability to connect, but traveling, being in a country, visiting the offices, that takes an effort. And it takes an effort not only in terms of time, but there are expenses. Do you think that the UIA should reimburse expenses for elected officers? Mr. Bingham, what about expenses and elected officers? What should the policy be about reimbursement?
As I understand it in the articles and bylaws, there is already a clause for the leadership to have reimbursement for some items, and I do support there being assistance with travel in financial terms. I also believe that one's home organization should also support you as well, along with your own support. So that should not be an issue going forward for anyone.
Mr. Tinganas, do you have the time? You're a very busy person, as all the other candidates are. Do you have the time to devote to the presidency?
Yes, of course. Yes, I can.
Okay.
You like, yeah.
Yeah. How would you combine it with your other activities in your home country?
By using all the means which were already mentioned here. Because, of course, if you are a planned person, if you are an organized planned person, and mostly if you cooperate with your team, that is the way to do things. Working, I'm a team man, so I really rely on what I mean by this team. And when I say team, I'm not only looking at the staff in Paris. I'm not looking at the officers, but I'm looking to the member section mainly, and I want to have a team from the member section themselves.
Okay. Mr. Cortés, I have a question for you again about reimbursement and expenses, because you mentioned in your video, you were very clear about a business plan and strategies. Could you please comment on that? How should expenses or the demands of presidency be reimbursed? Again, your microphone, please, gentlemen, the microphones.
Very, very important question, Marta. I believe that UIA has to look, for some close relation with the private sector and with the governments, in order to get more funds. I will be supported by my national section. I don't want any reimburse from UIA, of all my expenses. We are able to pay everything, but I will look for a lot of money outside UIA. That's the task of the president, to be close to other organizations, because we need money for competitions, for commissions, for working groups, and for all the different activities that UIA has to realize. You can see to my results when I was president of the National Federation of Architects in Mexico, when I was president of the Architects Association of Mexico City, we always got a lot of money from outside. There are many people that are able to help UIA.
Thank you. And Mr. Barmaki, how will the expenses for being president be paid in your case, should you be elected president?
During my stay in the UIA, I know that we have put only 10,000 euros split it for the three international positions, the president, the secretary general, and the treasurer. On my time, we never touched this money. I've been supported by my section, and even I paid from my own for all of this. If you have to reach such an important position, you have to be part of it, not only taking into consideration what the UIA will pay for you or what your section will pay for you. You have to move on to be on the right and on the good level of the position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm sure you can hear that from my accent that I'm originally from the United States. So I have a question for all of you, and it's to paraphrase John F. Kennedy. Ask not what UIA can do for you, ask what you can do for UIA if you do not become president. So let's assume that you do not become president. What would your role then be in UIA, if any? Mr. Han, would you like to?
Thank you, Martha. Yes. I was away for 3 years as being president of Congress of Seoul. So that kind of UIA-related activities is a good chance to serve for the UIA. Also, maybe some work programs and commissions as a team members. But Martha, can I touch on your question just before about the expenses?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Because I think it is important and fundamental questions about these expenses things. My observation in UIA, most of the people, most of the people from the developed countries with good, strong member sections pay, but many countries underdeveloped, relatively weak economy. Many of them, I found they pay their own expenses. And that prohibits with very young, talented, all the experienced persons who involved with the UI activities. I propose at least we should pay expenses because there's a work, there is expenses. Somehow, I mean, I know it was articles and bylaws, but maybe new mandate, we, as I described in my videos, with new global partners, maybe we're supporting each other and get some more fun and have them opportunity to work with them. It's not fair that only rich country can provide this personnel. That's my very important, I think, aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to that with the others in the next block of questions. Mr. Tinganas, what happens if you do not become president? What would your role be at the UIA?
Je serai un bon ambassadeur de l'UIA dans mon pays. So I will be
a good ambassador for the
country.
UIA in my own country.
Mr. Bingham?
One of the difficulties of not being on the UIA is that on the council is that I don't think many people know what actually happens on the UIA. I only learned this over the past 4 years of being involved. I currently lead my country's team on the Canberra Accord, and the UIA is soon to be one of the signatories. So I obviously support that going forward if I wasn't chosen. In my video presentation, you would have heard that I am a representative on the Public Health Group, the Professional Practice Commission, the Community Architecture Work Program, and I'll be involved with anyone that needs me and wants me. So my hands up.
Thank you. And how about Mr. Cortés? If you're not president, what will you do?
Well, I tell you, I have been always working for UIAs in the last decades, you know, in different commissions, in different tasks. At the moment, the link between the Federation of Architects in Latin America to UIA, and I want to be in very close contact with the other international organizations like African Union of Architects, like Asia, like the Council of Architects in Europe, and the others in the Caucasic world, and the Arab world, and the Mediterranean world. And I have been very close to the schools of architecture. I am an academician, and I have professional with many other relation with many other organizations, like United Nations. I want to work very hard to accomplish the United Nations targets for 2030 and for 2050. So there is a lot of work to do. You know, if I am not president, I will keep working hard.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Barmaki, if you're not president, what would you do related to the UIA?
Well, I've been, my major part of my professional skill was into the UIA and other organizations such as Union of Mediterranean Architects. I've been president of architects in my country. I've been member of the Arab countries, Arab architectural community. So I've been attending Seoul Congress, Baku Congress, so Baku General Assembly, sorry. So I can rely on my full giveness to the UIA, as I believe in. We all are architects, and this is our life. We have to be devoted to our union. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I want to ask some questions about the organization, and I'm going to try to ask you to be even more open and revealing in your answers to help the public. They don't have to be always politically correct, but they must be your ideas. If you were given a wish or power to change one thing in UIA in terms of the organization, what would you change? We've heard from Mr. Han. He talked about the rich countries versus the poor. But Mr. Bingham, what is that one thing that you would change if you had the opportunity or a wish granted?
Thank you, Martha. For me, it would be contextual relevance. And this can only be achieved through engagement with all beyond the walls of the council and searching for the better understanding of the needs of all the architects around the world in their varying contexts. Yes, the UIA must continue to stand for excellence, but it must equally consider the architectural needs of the masses and the roles that architects must play in the general well-being of all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barmaki, what one thing would you change within the UIA if you had a magic wand to do that?
Continuing to implement the new blood in our organization, giving more power, more presence and availability to young generation. The future is for them. They have to get profit from our experience as we have to follow the dynamism.
Yeah, but how would you do it? I mean, it sounds very nice.
It's already done. It's not nice. It's not a cliche. It's already done. We have already the two committees. We can put a new push for these committees who are already, they exist. And from that point, we can continue going on.
Thank you. Mr. Tiganos, what one thing would you change?
Well, it sounds like fairy tales. If you think, if you something, then something else is going to change in a chain of changes. But accepting the question, of course, Martha, I think we need to change the relations between UIA and its member sections, and this goes through quality communication, both in content and in means.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Cortés, I'll ask you as well. What one thing would you change?
Thank you. I think the main issue nowadays is communication. We have to be in close contact with the younger generations. We have to be in close contact with all the national sections and with all the regional organizations, with FAPA, with AUA, with CAE, with UMAR, with many other organizations. There are 11 architects organizations, and I want to invite them as a distinguished guests to all my council meetings. It's very important, to reinforce the communication and the union among all the architects. I think we are very divided, and we don't have close contact to most of the architects that they deserve that UIA pay attention to them.
Mr. Han, do you agree with Mr. Cortés that the communication is the key and that the UIA doesn't have contact with that broad mass of architects? And if you agree with him, how would you attempt to solve that problem?
Well, the communication is one thing, which is very, very important. We need to be inclusive to everybody, young and old, women and men, and poor and rich. But I think the most important UIA goal, if I say only one thing, make UIA relevant and pragmatic global organization. So member sections and architects get something out of it, so they keep their interest and join with us. Otherwise, we are obsolete. We are long gone. Thank you.
Thank you. This idea of relevance, I think, is particularly important, and I face it every day at school. But it's a very complex and not easy to discern. I see that we have 5 very intelligent and respected male candidates. Where are the women? Why are there no women running for UIA president? And what would you do, Mr. Bingham, if anything, to increase the diversity in the organization?
As you all know, I come from a country where representation is a key at the moment, and we've worked hard for this to achieve the strides that we've made. So too with the UIA. Progress has been made, and it started with the 2017 signing of the Khartoum documentation, which was on gender equity. It's also been worked at the present moment within the Professional Practice Commission. Beijing has been very involved in that. And as I mentioned earlier, coming from a country where we are, with every committee that we have gender and race balanced across all committees, and it has to be done through the leadership. So you need a leader that is going to be open-minded and open-eyed to this and achieving these goals. And therefore, leadership is key in being able to achieve that equity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barmaki, what do you think is the problem with the profession and UIA, or the explanation for the lack of women being represented both in UIA and in the profession?
I don't have any problem in this, because almost women are embedded in the work of the UIA. We have a lot of vice president women in the UIA, council member women in the UIA. Too bad for this time, we are 4 men running for this post. Yeah. But the question was raised by a member section asking when the UIA will have a woman president. Maybe they forgot that we have 2 women being president, Sarah Doppelson and Louis Cox, who were very appreciated during their mandate. So it's very bad not having women, but for sure there will be women running as a council member as Vice President, and even for the Secretary General, where women running for this post too. So we have no difference between men and women. They can run wherever they want and wherever they think they will be very intensive in their work.
Mhm. Mr. Cortés, do you agree with that, that there is no problem within the UIA or no problem in terms of gender equality within the profession?
Well, I tell you, I want to increase the number of female architects that participate in UIA. I want to encourage them, you know, and I hope many women will come to UIA on voluntary basis. I really work with women in a very nice way, always. And I have been very close to Sarita Toppelson in Mexico, to Luis Cox, to Denise Insedey, that was a candidate from Turkey, and with all the candidates for vice presidents at UIA. We have Natalie in Region 1, you know, we have Rim in Region 3, we have Jacinta, we have many council members that are women, and I think we have to increase the number of women. That is a very important issue. So bravo for the women.
Mr. Tiganas or Mr. Han, would you like to respond to the gender question before we move on?
John Rule, you first.
Thank you, Serva. Yes, as Michelle and Cortés already explained, we had two lady presidents of UIA, and also our observation, when a lady becomes a candidate, she always wins. And even in this campaign of election, I think we have 17 ladies competing for 28 positions, and one is already selected as vice president. So we are heading the right directions, but I think we need to import more young generation too, because young and women and the minority, I think, is important. Luckily, these days, in every school of architecture in the world, many women students are overnumbering the men. So I think we will have a bright future as far as we'll engage them to UIA for the good workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tiganas, we'll give you the last word on gender before we move on. Maybe
I
we'll
like the
slip in.
because I'm coming from a country where there are more women architects than men. So also the students in the School of Architecture, there are more female student architects in my country. So I don't see any problem. I think we are lucky to have the situation, and I'm sure that what you see on the screen now is just a roll of hazard, as my colleague said.
Well, I will just tell you that we have about 35 schools of architecture in Spain. More women are students. I believe there are only 2 or 3 directors of schools of architecture, and I'm within that. So there are many numbers to look at, I'm sure, as we move forward. But let me switch up a little bit and let's talk about the governance of UIA. There were some comments in the videos about making the UIA more transparent and to listen and be accountable to its members. Now, these are wonderful goals, but the truth or the proof in the pudding, the proof comes in the strategy. What specific measures would you take to make UIA more transparent and make it accountable to its members? Mr. Han, I will ask you to go first this time, please.
Thank you again. Okay. I think UIA articles and bylaws should be revisited to make this more relevant to current conditions. So no matter who elected as office holders, article and bylaw shall guarantee the basic principle of UIA, which is transparent and democratic governance. Otherwise, it may, depending on the personality, or the way of running the office, it will. So I think current article and bylaws are a little bit loose in that sense. So far it was okay, but I think, and we a lot of us think that this is a time to revisit this and make it more transparent, or more guarantee for this. All the member sections will be heard in equal voice. That's the way it should be. So that will be the first task we have to go through for the first of mandate.
Thank you. Mr. Cortés, do you agree with that the bylaws should be stricter to guarantee that the organization listens to members and is more transparent, or would your specific strategy be different?
No, I totally agree with that. You know, Region 1 has proposed a motion that our French friends, the artists from France, have proposed that this motion goes to the General Assembly. I already signed the motion because I believe that this should be done based on clear terms of reference and in a democratic manner, listening to all national sections and organizations. So we have to restructure the organization of UIA and update the articles and bylaws. That's right. So that's why we have to work very hard. There is a lot of work to do. Yeah. And Le Corbusier used to say, it's not to make a revolution, it's to make the evolution faster. No, we have to work on the evolution of UIA.
Great. Mr. Barmaki, do you agree with Mr. Han and Mr. Cortés that by modifying the bylaws would be your strategy? And how would you specifically improve the accountability of the UIA to its members and make it more transparent?
First, for me, the bylaws will depend on the change we are doing. It's the last part to be talking about. We all agree that we should have a change into the UIA. A lot of people are talking about transparency, democracy, whatever you want. I will focus on the certain part, which is a close relation with the member section. It's not only to elected people to make the decision for about the 1.5 million architects all over the world, and depending on their section members or member section in the UIA, they should be more devoted, more involved in the member section. At that time, we achieve the transparency and we can have democracy at that time. After doing all the change and being on the 21st century, we should not deny our past. We should look on our past, in the present, and build the future later on. At that time, when we put all this scale, at that time we can talk about article and bylaw. They depend on the change. They are not the major issue, if you want.
Thank you. Do you agree, Mr. Bingham, that the bylaws should, or maybe they are not the important issue, to help the UIA go forward and be more transparent and accountable? Or what would your strategy be?
I think the word change is used too glibly. One actually needs to start with a review of seeing what is or is not working, and then reflect that against the standing articles and bylaws. There's also the word communication was mentioned by one of the other presenters earlier, and this sense of there being something hidden all the way along or through the various meetings that I had, I don't think is necessarily true. It's just that the communication is lacking and hasn't been filtered down through to the various council members in time. So hence there's this buildup of anxiety and thinking that there is something untoward going on. So I don't necessarily believe that the articles and bylaws which have stood for so long and applied for so long and worked for so long are necessarily bad. That there may be some that need to be changed. There may need to be some tightening up, in particular on the ability, say, of the president to have carte blanche on many of the items that they may decide on. So I think there is some tightening up that is needed.
But for the most part, I think they stand good stead for going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tiganas, we're going to you for this last question. What about specific strategies would you have to make the organization more transparent and accountable to all its members?
Yeah, I think the key of our organization is its relevance to the member section, and this may be improved by communications as mentioned. And I also believe that we need a clear objective in front by analyzing our strengths and weaknesses, of course, opportunities and trends, but we need to proceed incrementally. I really believe in testing a model, designing a model, and like the software, which has different releases in time because you are observing how it works and how it serves the users, we may progress. I really think that this kind of a new model should be rapidly put in our pages, and we should follow it after we agreed upon. And I also believe, as some of my colleagues already mentioned, that the key is not in the rules and the bylaws. They will follow if we have something well designed.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to go back to the question that Mr. Hahn brought up before when he said that currently rich UIA member sections or wealthy parts of the organization can afford UIA governance. And I believe, Mr. Hahn, you spoke about the need to have more equality between the richer sections and the ones that were facing more challenges. Could you please, Mr. Hahn, speak about specifically how you would do this? Because before you mentioned the idea of giving more opportunities, but opportunities cost money. They need resources. So what would be your specific strategy for that?
Yes, so there is a work, there is expenses, I told you, and it's supposed to be paid. Because people, every people in the UIA so far is work as a voluntary base, but voluntary base goes only so much. You have a job, you have family, you cannot really devote yourself to create some kind of a tangible product out of this 2-year mandate. So what I propose is, let's say have more financial resources from many, these days, many global private companies. They are very cautious of environment, like electric cars, carbon emission related businesses. They can easily go work hand by hand by UIA. And, I'm from Korea, like Hyundai, Samsung. They spend a lot of money for those goodwill, and we go over there, like Cortés said, that we need this business plan, and let them work. Maybe their labor cannot be paid, but expenses, I think, it should be paid. Otherwise, small countries, poor countries, it's a big money for their travel. $2,000, $3,000, big money for their country. So I think we all can work for it and make it inclusive UIA. Thank you.
You're muted, Marta.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, Mr. Cortés, you had a similar comment about looking for private sector funding. Will the purpose of that private sector funding you're talking about, how would you invest the funds within the organization?
Very, very good question, Marta. Thank you very much. Well, it's essential to find innovative ways to assist members in need of financial sponsorship. For example, UIA can create a special fund for this with the help of governments and the private sector, as I said, and there are many events that UIA is organizing. We have to pay attention to the next 2 big events that we are going to have. In Madrid next year in May, Teresa Taboas is the president, one candidate for member of council, is organizing a housing forum. We have to go to this housing forum. And from there, we can get revenues for UIA. And the next Congress in Denmark in 2023, that Natalie is the Vice President of Region 1, is very hard working on that. We have to push and encourage many people to come to Denmark. As many people comes to the forum and to the next Congress, UIA will have some resources besides all the support of the private sector. So we have to help Teresa and Natalie to organize 2 big events, and we couldn't go to Brazil, but we will go to Spain and we will go to Denmark.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bingham, would you like to comment on financing UIA and making more equality within the organization?
Yes, thanks, Marta. I think the unfortunate reality of civilization is that the haves dictate to the have-nots. This pandemic that we've been going through and still are going through, I think has highlighted this disparity even more. The UIA currently has in place a number of ways of addressing the numbers of architects and from various regions in terms of their fees. I think more can be done in that regard. Contrary to popular belief, the UIA has money in its finances and bank accounts. So there is money to be shared amongst others. And I think that the wealthier nations are currently doing it, but could even help a bit more. I'd just like to end with in saying that we have to concentrate on upliftments of the other countries that aren't part of this. So the benefit of having everyone involved is going to benefit everyone. And the more people you have involved, the more money you will naturally have. Thank you.
Great. And Mr. Barmaki, would you like to comment on that about how you could increase resources to help make more equality throughout the organization? Do you agree with your colleagues?
Somehow, yes. Some other part, I have something very specific to say. We should be known to get more people giving us money. We should be known all over the universe. We should be known globally. Means media. We are so far, as UIA, we are so far from media. Maybe some of our member section even don't know what UIA is doing. That's why, first of all, we should increase our relation with the media. Communications, what they said, it's a very important point. But I will tell you, Lebanon, Bulgaria, Sudan, some of Latin America has been already involved in the UIA in all levels, in Euro, as Euro members or council members. But our choice should be on the right person, on the person who is devoted and want to work, not only talking about rich members or poor members. In the UIA, we should be on equal basis. We are all working for our organization. It's our life. That's why we should have the good choice for the good person who should be entitled to work and to be really responsible in the UIA.
Mr. Barmaki, you're getting off the point there, but thank you so much. Mr. Tiganas, would you like to close this question about financing and how you think that the UIA can become more equitable? What would be your specific questions?
Of course, it's a very important issue. And we have to develop new models for financing. I really believe, as I said before, in relevance. And I believe that relevance attracts interest and attracts, of course, also financing. Then I also believe in projects. I think we should develop projects also on regional basis, not only on global basis, and even on local basis, of course, with our partners, which are our members actually, because money for good reason is in the world. And I really believe that following this policy of getting together what we have for relevance, we may solve the problems we really have now. So I believe in more work with less travel, if you like, which is important. And I also believe that it's not so much the question of affording to be member of UIA, but wishing to be member of UIA because you believe in the return of your investment.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cortés, you brought up the question about the Congress, and 2023 in Copenhagen is the Copenhagen-based World Congress. What should be done to assure a fruitful and satisfactory and meaningful Congress in Copenhagen 2023?
That's a very good question. You know, first of all, I think we need all the participants from all over the world, and we need to define very well the aims of the Congress. I believe that the Congress in Denmark, because Scandinavian people are very worried about the issue of climate change, has to be focused on the agenda of United Nations for 2030 and 2050. I think we have to work hard on that issue, everybody around the world. And we have to create a commission in each country, you know, to face the problem of climate change. That is one of my main issues if I become president.
Thank you. Mr. Tiganes, how would you change a Congress, or what would you like to see different in Copenhagen 2023 than in past Congresses?
Yes, I think they are on a good path. So we know a lot of their preparations. I think that place, specifically Copenhagen, is a kind of a beacon for good architecture. And actually it proves that, let's say, a relatively small country with a very high culture of architecture may lead the progress towards a new mindset regarding what architects can do in the future. And I think most of the things we should do all around the world in the future, they are really doing right now. So I think it will be a fantastic Congress. I will not refer to how to change what they are preparing, but we are probably have a new model for Congress, and I know that.
Great. Mr. Hahn, where would you like to see a future Congress, for example, in 2026? And what criteria would you use to choose the host city?
Oh, that's a little bit political decision we have to make.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, yes. But my experience as President of Congress in Seoul, I try to invite as many as architects from the world. And luckily, we have many of them actually came to Seoul and enjoyed our hospitality. But through this pandemic, you know, we are looking at the 2020 Rio, 2021 Rio, totally virtual Congress. Now, our notion may be shifted towards a little bit different directions. I think I heard that the 2023, the Denmark, Copenhagen, it will be different Congress. It's more like, let's say, the people-friendly Congress. They probably don't take a taxi or take a car. They maybe either walk or they just take a bicycle or something. So it's a twist of thinking about the Congress, about the 17 the SDG goals by UN. And I think future Congress, wherever it is, we know we have 2 candidates, but I think they have to concentrate on the new way of these changes, climate changes, all these things, and bring them as a content of Congress, and they will win. Thank you.
So you don't want to commit to that, but that's okay. I'll go to Mr. Bingham. Mr. Bingham, do you want to take the bull by the horns on this one? 2026, where would you like to see a Congress, or what would be the criteria for selecting the host city?
Having been one of the organizers for Durban 2014, I know how much effort and energy and tears go into organizing this, and it's not always achievable on your first try, as we found out very quickly. And so I'm a believer in fairness and equality and evenness. And so it should be looked at on that basis, on where it has or hasn't been, or which region it has or hasn't been in over a number of the years that we've been having these congresses. So I think that would be my starting point. I'd also, having seen the presentations at when we were in Seoul for the Copenhagen one, it was also interesting to see the presentations that were done that involved the videos of the people that lived there, as opposed to the buildings. It was so much more rewarding to actually listen to what people said, and people living in the cities and using the cities for our experience, to see what we would like to know and learn when we go there, rather than just looking at the buildings that you can do by going onto Google Earth, for that matter. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Barmaki, what is the most fulfilling aspect of a Congress that you have attended, and what would you like to see at a future Congress?
It's a very, very tricky question. If I will talk about what Congress was too hot for my heart, it was in Italy. It was the best one. I already have been. The other one are too good, but it's more hot being in Italy. Then we were talking about rich and poor countries and poor members. You know how much it costs to have a Congress at your member section in your country. Since I will talk about China, the previous Congress, China, Berlin, Italy, Seoul, Durban, Japan, you don't find any country on the scale of the human being. It's all huge countries having power and having the way to pay the Congress. That's why I would like to find a little country which can attract all people in culture, in heritage, and being really enthusiastic to find that this new Congress will attract all people of the region, not only the rich people, but the people who deserve really to know about the UIA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cortés, I'm going back to you because you opened up a conversation or a theme very interesting, which is reaching out to other organizations, United Nations, or perhaps UNESCO, WTO. UIA is an incredible organization which represents millions of architects, but perhaps there is still an improvement needed to have UIA recognized in terms of its stature, its voice, and the strength of the organization vis-a-vis other institutions and governments. Could you try to zero in on what you would do to strengthen these connections with other organizations to make them real and effective? And if you could go to specific strategies, because up until now we're talking generally about aspirations, but how does an organization like UIA get close to other organizations and work together in a real and effective way?
Very good, Marta, very good question. Well, I believe that UIA has to revitalize itself and has to be very close to the United Nations targets. You know, we have to work close to them, to UNESCO. I am a member of ICOMOS, you know, and we have to pay a lot of attention to all the heritage that we have around the world. We have to pay very much work, you know, to recover the heritage. All our countries have wonderful things. We have to be close to Commonwealth. They are doing wonderful efforts, you know, to work in each country where they are part of. So there are many regional organizations as well that we have to be close to them. The only way to have success is to be present in all their meetings. You know, we have to be present because this is the problem the paradigms of the future of the world is how do we face the future of housing, urban development, habitat, and ecological issues. So as I mentioned, climate change, but we have to be part of all the commissions that they create. There are many commissions when many architects are participating, but we have to take them in consideration. So I want to have more presence close to them in order to really participate in an holistic way.
Thank you. Mr. Bingham, would you insert yourself into these meetings of all these organizations, or do you have a different strategy to increase the links with them and make the collaboration more real and effective?
It's easier said than done, inserting yourself into one of these meetings, and I've learned that the hard way. We have to start at the bottom. Each of our member sections has to be consulted and look to their own governments to see strength in their input that they can give to their own government, so that that filters through to organizations like the United Nations. In short, the UIA, and that's us, have to up our game at this as well, because even though there's been attempts made, I don't think we've achieved anywhere near that we can. José Cortés mentioned a moment ago about the Commonwealth Association of Architects. There is so much work being done by them at the present moment, and it links back to this communication issue that I spoke about earlier on. Our SDG group is doing amazing work, and that information and that work needs to go through to these world bodies for them to see what value architects can give. Architects are undervalued, and we've been at fault in allowing that undervalue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tiganas, again, we're back to communication, but maybe it has to do with technology. How, from your perspective, how do you make in a very effective way the links with these organizations to implement the communication that Mr. Bingham is speaking about?
I think we learned a lot from the last more than 1 year in communications, and we have to filter what we learned and to use as much as possible in the benefit of our organizations. I really believe that each member section has people inside which are well connected, and I will turn to those members of ours in order to connect to the important organizations in the world. And I also agree with what my colleagues mentioned about being present, but it's not necessary to be present as a president, but you have to be present as a network. So I think we need to increase the network, and I'm looking towards very carefully on our major resource we have in our 4 commissions, which are very effective, and I will try to use them as our main ambassadors to this organization.
Thank you. Mr. Barmaki, do you agree with this? Because when I've asked you questions, you've focused on the important role of the president, but how do you, and you've focused on the important role of the press, without a doubt, 2 very, very important aspects. But do you think that the organization can do more to be closer to other organizations like UN, UNESCO, WTO, and be more effective? And if you believe that, what is the specific strategy that you would use?
First, let me say there is the difference between our organization, which groups only the architects organization in each country. The UN and the UNESCO are governmental organization. There is a big difference between assets and the power. So that's why we have to be first. We have to be integrated, or to be ourselves, to know what we want really from this organization before going out. We have to renovate ourselves to be really in the good concentrating work, to be outside. In this, if we do it, we can be on the same level, talking with UN or talking with UNESCO or other organizations which are mostly governmental organizations, not only related to architects organization. And we have to improve ourselves first before going to others. We should renovate ourselves. We should be very strong inside ourselves before going to others. That's why I was talking about the importance of the media and the importance of the communication in such part. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Han, how would you build up long-term relationships on behalf of UIA? One thing is when you're a president for 2 years, but these relationships should not depend on just the individual, but should be ongoing. Could you tell us a little bit about specific strategies that you think would be effective for this?
Thank you, Martha, for this question. I've been agonizing for this aspect because UIA has only 3 international officers and 5 vice presidents and 20 council members. But a lot of work, they have to go with the regional, the member sections, the architects. And we have, it is so important with the UN, UNESCO, UN Habitat, e-commerce, all those things, because they are the ones who actually make the policies. We have to be there. We have to suggest the good solutions, but how are we going to do it? We are lack of manpower. So I propose the, let's say, UIA ambassadors, like former UIA officers, the past presidents. Many of them has a good relations with all those international bodies. They open the door for us. I think we utilize all the resources the UIA has, where people have time and experience, and that's my proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to comment on one aspect of UIA. I know something about it, but I have not been super active within the organization. I've heard lots of words about relevance and things like that. So I guess if it's not relevant to me and I'm in the field of architecture and design, it's probably not so relevant to the general public. So we've talked a little bit about congresses and including the public. We've talked about media, reaching out to the public. I would really hope that you could comment, how can an organization, or do you think UIA as an organization should have a role within general society, should be somehow a voice talking about the value that can be added by the architecture profession to a broader public? And if you believe that this is true, how would you do it? And I think I'll go to Mr. Tiganes because you made a note there. And so I'm hoping that you have something to say about the UIA vis-a-vis a more broad public.
Absolutely. I really think that we should turn out to the society as much as possible. Of course, we depend a lot on our member section, which is both true and important. So we depend on the relevance, also on the relevance of our member sections towards the individual members as architects. But coming back to the idea of being relevant, more relevant to the society, this really needs a kind of a plan, in my opinion. And this was already started by looking at the 17 SDGs, which are already proven by our colleagues and our commission related to this topic, that they all have something to do with architecture. I think it's something really, really important, and we should go and follow this path and enlarge the way we communicate this to the society. Architecture is everywhere, it has to do with everybody's life. This is a truth we have to demonstrate by good examples.
Right. Mr. Bingham, you talked about ambassadors and the many member sections. How would you strengthen member sections?
The selections that we're currently going through only allows, as was mentioned earlier, a certain number of people to be represented on the council. It's beyond that we need to place focus as well and see that the other member sections who have supported the UIA for many, many years are actually incorporated and kept abreast of what is going on. that it's critical to also engage, as was mentioned a moment ago, about the people living in the various countries and the upliftment of people. So if we through the UIA can show what we can do to help the regions and the member sections that aren't represented on the council, and to show that we're making a difference for the people living in those countries, I think you're going to see that there's movements and understanding better than what you currently find, and that the relevance can therefore improve.
Yeah, Mr. Cortés, you've talked a lot about the very high-level organizations like United Nations and others, but how do you reach people, the man or woman on the street? And is that something that you would like to do? And do you agree with Mr. Bingham about having strong member sections to be those ambassadors to reach a broader aspect or a broader part of society?
Thank you, Marta. Well, as you know, I have been living in many countries. I have been teaching in Japan. I have been teaching in India, in Africa. I have been studying in Denmark, in United States, in Boston. I have been living in Lebanon. And wherever I go, I see the society are very sensitive to architecture. They are very sensitive to their private spaces and to the public spaces. We have to reinforce the profession of architecture. We have to convince society that architecture is better to raise the level of happiness, to raise the level quality of life. And that's why we have to encourage national sections to organize more architectural competitions, to organize more teams of work in the real life, is close to local governments, to federal governments, so that the society can see that the architects are worried about their environment, either in the rural or in the urban areas. So we have to show society that we are worried for the habitat, and we are worried for the future of their quality of life. And I tell you, your position as director of the Pritzker Prize is very important. We don't want to leave you out from UIA. You have to part, a very essential part, because all the Pritzker Prize have to be close to UIA in order to be more sensitive of what are the needs of the whole society. We have a lot to learn from you. Thank you.
Mr. Cortés, thank you very much. And I have stepped down from my role at the Pritzker just recently, just a few weeks ago. And there is a new person who has taken over, and I'm sure she will be a wonderful liaison with you. But I have to tell you, part of the reason that I stepped down from the Pritzker after 16 years is, first of all, because it's time for new experiences, new roles. But also I found that I was had to be extremely diplomatic and could not express an opinion. And those of you who know me know that I like to express opinions clearly. And so now I hope I have more freedom to be able to do that. And so I just want to say that, and also thank you for expressing your opinion so clearly in this conversation. Mr. Hahn, let's go just to you. Strengthening the image of the architect in society. How would you do that?
Yes, that's what I actually studying for last few years. That we're talking about the relevance, we're talking about reach out, we're talking about communication, but for what's the purpose? You know, the UIA without member section is nothing. And we keep saying this united, and we keep saying this communication and relevant, but we don't really study what they really need from us. All the organizations quite busy for their internal and domestic problems. So I think relevant is important, but we need to see what is the relevant, what is belong to this relevant. And I think we need to come up with certain directions and visions to give them so they realize UIA is there helping us for something. And I can say about three main issues, but maybe it's too long. So if you give me a chance, I'll do it, but maybe I will do it later. But that goal is so important. So we are connected, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me ask Mr. Barmaki. The profession of architecture is extremely diverse, and just as the member sections of UIA are very diverse, there's not one model that fits for every definition of architect, or as Mr. Han was saying, what is relevant has probably a broad definition. How would you, in your country, beyond the press, but how would you convince the general public that architecture is relevant to them? And I always like to use the analogy, we go to the doctor or the dentist probably once a year, once every 6 months, but we don't go to an architect maybe ever. So it's a very difficult profession to communicate to a broad public. How would you suggest that we get the message out to society? And would it be through strengthening member sections, or perhaps you have another way?
If you are sick, you go to the doctor and to the dentist. That's it. If you are in good health, you go to the architect to have your own home. We all are building for the society. On individual scale, we are known from the society, but we should be known not only from our member section. We should be known as an organization, having all this group of the member section. All the architects are known very well in their society, but the lack is that our organization should be known from our society. That's why we should increase our relation with our society on member section level and then on the highest level of our organization. That's why we are building everything for everybody, even for doctors, for everyone who is living in his own home. They require the architects to be in their life, I think. Thank you very much.
So, but Mr. Barmaki, how do you strengthen member sections? What specifically can you do?
First, we should have not only work on the scale of the country. We should go through international competition. Last and recently, we had a very important competition, UIA UNESCO competition in our country. It was related to Oscar Niemeyer campus. We have to put into this huge campus a new buildings. It was taking into consideration the 20th century heritage. It's very important to go to the upper level. It gives the architects, not only the site architects, to prove themselves. It's very important for us, the international competition. It will be on the scale of each country first, and second, on the scale of the universe. Everybody will be integrated or will be happy to participate and to get, I remember all known buildings actually in the world are the fruit of an international competition. It will activate everybody, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Let's keep on this subject of competitions because it's something very close to my heart. And I don't think that one model fits every single context, but that's another debate we can have privately. But it seems to me that not only the competitive process and the norms or the rules that govern a competition are important, but you it seems to me that we need to educate the client, whether the client is public, a developer, an organization, or a private company. Mr. Tiganas, competitions, is there anything you would like to say about competitions, how to make them more professional, and are there any measures that you would like to see implemented to make competitions more fair across the board?
Right at the point, this is a subject I'm working with at home in my country. I created many competitions and in a region where I live. And I achieved that by two means. First, I created a team which is competent to organize competition, which is a very delicate and professional subject. You have to know a lot of subtle details in order to have a good competition. Secondly, I managed to build relationship and also partnership with politicians and representatives of the state, so with the power. And thirdly, we try to develop by small competitions with rapid visualization in order to demonstrate that it leads to a very good result. Generally speaking, I think we have to put the link and to make the link relevant between the quality of architecture and the way it was produced. And there's so much linkage between competitions and the quality, which many people don't know, and probably not representatives of the media don't look at the way it was produced. So I think we have a lot of resources in, let's say, the making of architecture, putting on the screens and on the pages of the newspapers and magazines for everybody, not only for architects, the secret of how quality was achieved to competitions.
Mr. Bingham, quality is different in different contexts. Do you think UIA, as Mr. Tiganas says, do you think the UIA can help the public understand what is quality, especially if it's different in different contexts?
I'd like to take a step back from that, if I may, and before it gets to the UIA, I think the member sections need to be involved in that, and even breaking that down further. While the RCC, that's the Competitions Commission of the UIA, have been doing excellent work over the recent times, I think the relevance of many of the competitions needs to be assessed as well. And I think that links to your question, Marta, because the previous question had to do with how will the people know about architecture, and therefore how will the people know about architecture competitions, which are largely geared up for urban design or larger projects and more expensive projects. It's actually the multitudes that need to be addressed. And I'm sure if we can focus more on some competitions for that aspect of our architecture and humanity, I think the better it would be. There are many organizations currently around that do work with the underprivileged, and we could consider their work as a part of a competition as well. I'm thinking of Architecture Without Borders. In my own country, we have the One-to-One agency that does upgrading of informal settlements. So while we're doing excellent work, I think in the RCC and with the UIA, I think there's a possibility to expand our relevance. Back to the word relevance again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to switch up because I just want to ask our three people who haven't responded to this to respond to another question, and then we will proceed to closing this event. But Mr. Hahn, what should be the major influence of UIA on institutions of higher education throughout the world?
Oh, okay.
Okay, education and UIA.
Education and UIA, okay. Well, actually, it goes back to your former question, how to reach out public. That includes a student too. The UIA is not known very well to them, yeah. Let me just explain a little bit of my experience. I'm not sure if you heard about Hallyu, Korean Wave. It started about 20 years ago with drama and then music and movies. And now so many young students and young generation know about it. They follow them. Billions of them follow them. So I think that's the soft power of culture. It's not a strong the military force, or it's a strong the monetary power, but it's soft power. And I think UIA should be a soft power of architecture platform in the world. So the students, they become architect through the competitions and through the awards and prizes, right? I think that is one of the biggest role that UIA has to do it. The promote the best practice, good students, good architects, reach out to them and acknowledge them. That's one of the goals that UIA has to do it. Now in Korea, every city now have a city architect. I'm a city architect of Incheon lately, and I am advisor of the mayor, talking about the policies of a city, as well as all the public small buildings, the procurement, and every single buildings. Okay.
Education, Mr. Han.
Okay.
And
so,
we need to go. We need to move on.
Okay. So through this, students learn how they actually have to work in the real life. Every competition is open. The YouTube, they broadcast it, so they know how to do it. And our UIA validation system should engage this. And not only you go to the validate every school, but we have to set the validation system for each country so they can adopt it and to use it for their schools.
Okay.
And that's one of the things.
Thank you. Mr. Cortés, you've been involved in education. Education is different today than in the past. What should be the influence of UIA on institutions of higher education today?
Very good question. You know, I have been for many years teaching in different universities and around the world. And I have been Dean of the School of Architecture and the Master on Urban Projects. And I believe that one of the first issues is how to help the schools of architecture around the world to be accredited. There are many schools of architecture in the world. You know, we have a commission in the UIA on the topic of education. They are working very hard. And we notice that most of the schools are not accredited. We have not been following the Canberra Agreement. You know, Philippines is working very hard on that. And I believe that we have to pay attention to the accreditations of the schools, and we have to push the schools of architecture, you know, to be renewed with their academic programs. You know, the evolution of the technology and the world is very fast. All these ecological problems that we are facing. So we need new inputs in the future education programs. And I believe that is able if we are close to the schools of architecture. You know, and relation with competitions, I tell you, we have very good competition group at the UIA, coordinated by Regina Goncier from Switzerland, with the help of Jerzy from Poland. And we have to support more these groups of competitions. We have to encourage the governments, you know, locally, national level, that every public building has to be competed among architects to show that good architecture is possible, you know, for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barmaki, we have to begin to close now. So if you don't mind, I would like to start with you. Would you please take about 30 seconds and sum up your position, the basic idea that you hope that our enormous audience that has been following you, it's now over 175 people. They would like to know your very brief statement about why you are running for president and what your platform is should you be elected president of UIA. So, Mr. Barmaki, may I ask you to take those 30 seconds, please?
Thank you very much, Martha, but I will speak in French.
Okay.
Bon, je suis ravi de faire ce débat avec tout le monde. Ça m'a donné des idées, ça m'a raffiné mes idées à moi. Donc, on est tous là pour le bien fond de l'UIA. Je reprends mon expérience à l'UIA. Je connais les coins et recoins de l'UIA, tout en étant secrétaire général et passant par d'autres étapes, donc une affaire d'une dizaine d'années et plus à l'intérieur de l'UIA, et spécialement durant mon mandat comme secrétaire général où j'étais très attaché à toutes les choses administratives, politiques de l'UIA. Donc, je vois tel que, en résumé, on devrait faire un changement à l'intérieur de l'UIA. Ce changement ne devrait pas se faire uniquement comme une seule personne qui doit imposer ce changement. Ce changement doit se faire au stade de toutes les sections membres. On doit tous être à égalité, voir ce qui pourrait être le mieux pour l'UIA, pour progresser, être plus en contact avec la société. Okay, I will shut off.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Mr. Cortés, please, 35
Yes.
seconds.
Dear friends and dear architects, first of all, I want to say thank you very much and congratulate the organizers of this town hall meeting, the president and the staff of UIA, the interpreters, and all the participants. A special thanks to Martha Thorne, who has conducted very professionally this very successful meeting. I want to take the opportunity to express my solidarity to the architects from Brazil for the great effort of organizing the World Congress of UIA under such difficult circumstances. They have been real heroes with all the challenges they have been facing. First time in history of UIA to organize the Congress and General Assembly online. As evident in today's meeting, we have great challenges and great opportunities. And with collective effort, we can greatly enhance UIA's ability to meet them. The main tasks are the next. Number one, UIA has to revitalize its organization. Number two, UIA cannot be the same after the post-pandemic era. Number three, UIA is not a club of friends. It is a professional organization created to reconstruct the disorder of urban growth and to defend the architects and architecture with democratic participation. Number four, UIA has to raise the level of perception of the architects. And number five, UIA has to work hard on the sustainable development goals for the UN Agenda 2030. UIA's mission is to serve the global community of architects
1 minute.
to which it belongs. I believe it's critical that the world at large evolves, UIA transform itself to effectively address the challenges.
Please keep the time, please.
Allow me to serve you. I want to be an active part in the process of transformation of UIA. I fully embrace UIA's vision. I will build a stronger UIA to deliver better outcomes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Han, may I ask you, and please be brief?
Martha, we were directed to have 2-minute speech, but I try to make it short, okay?
Thank
it was
you.
Given, so, but
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, dear President, dear friends of UIA, with all this important discussion of today, I take this opportunity to share with you the vision for the betterment of UIA. Let's promote and acknowledge the good practice, good architect, good architecture, good city, good heritage. Through competitions, awards, we still have more ideas to improve these aspects. Let's set up the global standards and guidelines of architecture and built environment. UIA building codes, UIA contract forms, UIA green building guidelines, UIA architecture for all codes. Members countries actually can use to improve these conditions for their countries. Now, let's become emergency disaster helping hands, such as temporary shelter design guideline, affordable housing, young architects serving in the disaster fields. In order to achieve these goals, UIA needs to evolve into soft and flexible power platform which utilize current digital technology, communication, and databases. Platform which is comfortable to all of us, young and old, women and men, poor and rich, so they use this diverse platform as freely as their home. My experience at successful UIA Seoul Congress taught me this. If there is a will, there is a way. Together, let's make our dreams come true. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Bingham, and would you take the next minute and 20 seconds, and then we'll pass on to our final candidate.
Thank you very much, Martha. I'll try and be as brief as possible. I think
you.
my opening video said most of what I want to say, but I think it's important just to highlight that we need to review, we need consultation, and we need a unified vision going forward, and that's what I will work to. The UIA, I believe, has reached a watershed moment. For the success of our organization, you, as its members, need to consider the following. Acknowledgement that there's a lacking in direction and leadership, unfortunately, due to upheavals in this past term of office. 2, acknowledgement that the decisive action is needed, action that can be ideally suited to the shorter 2-year term of office. 3, recognize that as per Einstein's thinking, we cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. We cannot, therefore, keep recycling the same persons, in my view, implementing poorly performing or outmoded, unfocused, and in some cases, directionless spectatorship. Item 4, and seize the opportunity to entrust me, one who has shown clear, dedicated service with achievements over the past 4 years and before, one who has served the vision of the UIA and has a new vision for the UIA and the energy to implement it. I ask that you consider supporting me with your vote. My respect to the other candidates. I thank you, Martha, for your input and excellent questioning, and I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tigamas, if you would take the last moment before I turn the session over to the current president, Mr. Vonier.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor. Let's look at this debate like a model for a current, let's say, council meeting of UIA. And I'm referring also to the people which watched us and reacted from the public. I think this is the model. This is the model of talking about things, and I really hope that we are going to have this kind of debates also in the next mandate with any occasion. So the gems of architecture are existing and produced every day. We just have to use them, to put them on the same page and to use them in order to provide and demonstrate the relevation of architecture. As I said before, architecture matters, and it matters a lot. So I'm very confident that we may establish a better relation with our member section. I'm looking for an excellent relation. I'm very confident by looking to the candidates, to all posts in UIA, that's a great interest and a great energy to do it. And I thank you all, and I really hope to work together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martha, for this excellent job. I think you are already part of the team.
Thank you. Tom, before I turn it back over to you, could I just express my humble thanks, because to be sharing the screen with such an illustrious group of colleagues has been a pleasure. And I sincerely hope that I have been able to contribute to the decision-making process of UIA. And thanks once again for making me feel so much a part of the family so quickly. It's really my pleasure. And I turn it back to you, Tom.
Martha, the honor and the pleasure are ours. I have been watching the chat. You have not been in a position to do that. And you are receiving wonderful accolades for the way you've handled this. And I knew you would. So thank you. I think you've just done a stellar job. Thank you, candidates, for your participation. Thank you to the Nordic section for having proposed this idea in the first place. I think it was a wonderful idea. I wish we could have extended this opportunity for all of the other offices that are at play, but that would have involved, I don't know how many hundreds of machinations and combinations. We just could not do it, but perhaps in the future, that's something that we can try to arrange. And finally, thank you to the 170 plus participants from all around the world who have joined us. It is time for us to go. So let's give a big round of applause to Martha and to the candidates and wish everyone great success. Thank you again, and goodbye for now. I should thank the interpreters and the staff of the UIA as well, the Secretariat. They worked extremely hard to make this happen, and I think it came off beautifully. So thank you to all. See you in Rio virtually and perhaps before. All right? Take good care. We're drawing the meeting to a close.